If the Covenant actually existed and they stumbled upon Earth here in 2019, would they adopt humanity? And why wasn't humanity invited in the Covenant in Halo lore? Today we're gonna dive deep into these questions, plus we're gonna talk about a Covenant splinter faction that accepted humans post-war into their cult. Let's go ahead and get into it. It's gonna be a fun one, guys. This video is supported by Audible. Snag yourself a free Halo audiobook right down in the description below. In Halo gameplay, there's all these different Covenant species and subspecies and so on with all their special strengths and weaknesses. But since Halo 2, each of these races have adapted to somewhat being a deep part of Halo backstory, and most of them didn't actually join the Covenant willingly, as we found out over the past couple decades. Let's take a look at the history of the Covenant and how it came to be to pretty much of what it is in the Halo games and why humanity wasn't invited in. Sans Chayom are at the top of the totem pole, being the top tier species in the Covenant. Why is that? Well, to quickly recap, this is because they were the first ones to discover the Forgotten Foreigner artifacts, technically, and they built a religion around it and founded the Covenant, and they weren't afraid to use that technology and constructs for warfare, and they kicked the elites' butts on their home world, and having surrendered, the elites decided to be their immediate servants for the Great Journey, whom also adopted the religion they led, though previously had different opinions about it. This led the elites to be the muscle, and the Sans Chayom to be the brains of the Covenant, and they would begin recruiting other species, and by that I mean forcefully getting foreign alien species to join the Armada. The Grunts were recruited at year 2142, that's about 400 years before Halo 1 took place, although let me remind you, they didn't join willingly. As said in Halo 2 terminals, many Grunts were straight up forced in, although when they did rebel on High Charity, they did earn combat level instead of just being slaves and servants. And the Brutes were found by the Covenant in 2492, believe it or not, only about 60 years before Halo 1 took place. The Brutes were a shattered civilization, since barely surviving a nuclear holocaust event, and the Brutes just rediscovered radio and rocketry technology too. But many Brutes were quick to join the Covenant, and the ones that fought back were easily defeated and then basically absorbed into the Covenant. The Covenant, or specifically the Prophets, Truth, Mercy, and Regret, manipulated, lied, blackmailed, everything you could imagine to their way to the top, and the Covenant propaganda stated humanity damaged holy sites and impeded on the Covenant's great journey. Basically, a shard of mendicant bias informed the Prophets why investigating Harvest's treasure trove of foreigner artifacts told them that humanity were basically the chosen species, the inheritors or quote-unquote reclaimers of foreigner tech, not them. Basically, to reclaim ancient humanity's once space-faring time 100,000 years ago before they were screwed over by the now regretful foreigners. Now, this simple fact in the Covenant would easily dismantle and plummet everything that the Covenant built on for thousands of years into straight chaos, since it was widely believed that those who joined the Great Journey would be able to attain ultimate divinity and transcend the physical world, and through doing this would be firing the 7 Halo installations, which of course is actually just a bunch of death machines and it's not transcendence. But now knowing that this disturbing truth that humanity was chosen, Truth, Regret, and Mercy, these 3 assholes would need to cover everything up, and this would be done by starting war with humanity by committing mass genocide, which would begin at Harvest and then the rest of humanity's colony. From their perspective, this had to be done to save the Covenant, which if it had not, then someone somehow would have eventually figured out. They would have discovered that humanity was a new species, and they would have perhaps snooped around foreigner artifacts long enough to realize that they were the chosen ones, which one of two things would happen. They would either worship humanity and kind of treat them like deities, or the entire Covenant would collapse, or both. Real quick, I could not mention a group called Keepers of One Freedom, which I talked about in the beginning of this video. They are a religious group ran by Brutes post-Human Covenant War, and they actually would follow the religion of the Covenant, including the idea of the Great Journey. And this group actually, very uniquely, allowed humans amongst their ranks. Now, it said that the cult's manpower had up to thousands of brute, Kegyar, and human soldiers. Now, the cult is anti-UNSC obviously. So it's likely that those who would join, being human, would be rebels, insurrectionists, looking for a chance to get back at the system, at the UNSC, and or pursue their own agendas. I'm not quite sure if any humans believed in the Great Journey, but if they did, holy shit. You are so stupid, man. Wow, your entire... Putting aside the cover-up that humanity was reclaimers, if that wasn't a thing / they never found out, would the Covenant had found humanity, would they have assimilated them into the Covenant like the Grunts and Kigyar and so on? Well, unlike literally all the other adopted Covenant species like Grunts, humanity was on an entirely different level from them all. Something called the Technological Achievement Tiers were used by the Foreigners, and this system would later be adopted by the Covenant. This tier system is actually based off the real-life Kardashev scale, which are systems that basically break down a civilization's technology into a bracket system. Covenant brought in the drones and the jackals, which rested at a tier 4 technological status, the space age, and almost at the rock bottom, brutes at the tier 6 industrial age. The system works a little bit different. Lower it is, the better. However, a tier system higher than the drones and brutes at tier 3, humanity was space-faring, achieving things like space travel, conscious AI, flash cloning, etc. So the Covenant, technology-wise, would totally adopt humanity to join the Great Journey, as by 2525, when the Covenant discovered humanity, they would have certainly been attempted to be forced in. The big problem though, however, unlike grunts and jackals and every other race in the Covenant, is that humanity was spacefaring. They had multiple colonies on multiple planets across the galaxy, so the Covenant couldn't hold one planet hostage. They might be able to take up an entire colony, but there's still hundreds of other human colonies they would need to force humans into. But despite all that, I think it's likely humanity would still have gotten into a war, even without the manipulation of the High Prophets, simply because too many human colonies rested on quote-unquote holy sites with foreigner tech. So would the Covenant, if they came across humanity right now on Earth in 2019, would they take us in, adopt us, do whatever, basically force us into their ranks as slaves or warriors or whatever? Well, assuming they'd still want us after seeing the sick shit that we make up on the internet, keep in mind in real life we've entered qualifications for tier 5 atomic age by 1945, when the first atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, at least according to the Covenant adopted scale here. And 2 decades later, here in real life, we advanced into space travel tier by putting the first man on the moon in 1969, easily making us great candidates to be a part of the Great Journey. However, one could debate that we're still at tier 5 atomic age, but I really don't think it would matter that much because the brutes were a tier under that and they still brought them in. And yeah, they're super strong, but on the flip side, they're also kind of stupid and they're savages and kind of dangerous just to be around. But I think right now, here in 2019, we're at the same stage of jackals and drones at the space age. I made a video a while back, if the Covenant invaded here right now on Earth, what would happen? And I think it's pretty obvious we would be completely annihilated at their mercy. So with all that in mind, I would say that we would probably be the least or second least useful species in the Covenant, because we can't just pop out babies and to turn them into warriors like grunts, and we're not necessarily strong, especially not up to an elite or maybe even potentially a grunt. Humans would likely be forced to be slaves or servants, or I would say the thing that would make the most sense would be we would be put into some kind of Spartan program, kind of like crafted by Covenant, or perhaps they would lean on us for technological advancements. They would teach us things because humans are, show a lot of potential with tech even nowadays. And if the grunts rebelled, certainly I think humanity would too. I mean, if the Covenant came here right now in 2019, there would likely be a few nukes would go off, a few governments would fight back, but eventually we would have to surrender as a species, and most of us would probably be forced onto high charity, and we would be taken deep into space so we could either annihilate more races or, pursue the Great Journey and fire those Halo rings things and have all of us die. The whole idea of it honestly sounds really, really terrifying, and it'd probably be kind of a good movie, honestly. If you want to learn more about the Keepers of One's Freedom, that cult that allowed humans, check out Halo Retribution for free. You can choose any Halo novel you want, so go get one. Smash that like button too if you ended up enjoying, and subscribe here on HaloFollower and join me on this epic Halo journey. Guys, I'll see you soon in my next video. Peace!